everyone, welcome back to the Pokemon Trading Card Game special event in the lovely city of Utrecht in the Netherlands. My name's Ross Gilbert and I'm delighted to be joined once again by the lovely Joe Bernard. How you doing, Joe?
I'm doing great. We've had a ton of fantastic action throughout the day and we're getting to the business end of day one at this stage where players are getting into that winning in position. Always one of the most exciting times where there's a lot of pressure on every single action of every single turn of every single game. So I really am looking forward to the next couple of rounds.
Yeah, last round, I finally got a chance to walk the tables. I've been a very busy boy today. And I saw some interesting stuff. I saw a Crobat wheezing at, it was either all these decks were 501 or 51. I saw a Crobat wheezing. I saw a Lugia with more Peko V and wheezing. I saw a Flaffy, Joe. I think it was 5-1. I saw a Flaffy with a record of 5-1 with a legitimate good chance to get into day two. It's been a while since I've seen a Flaffy with a chance of day two.
Yeah, amazing to see. Players are looking to be creative this weekend, finding ways around the ever-present Lugia V-Star. Definitely a fantastic way to get yourself into day two and get into the championship points. Speaking of which, we've got a graphic for you talking about how we get to the World Championships, and it's all about accumulating those precious championship points.
Yeah, go to events, get championship points. Of course, we've got local events, which we know aren't really running at the moment, but we've got your regional championships, your special events, which are the same championship points-wise as regional championships, but without those cash prizes, and then the international championships, where there's 4 of those in the year, in the EU, Latin America, North America, and Oceania, and they are absolutely brilliant. In Europe, at least, the Masters need 250 championship points, but it's always worth reminding us that we've got, you know, the top 22 players get a travel stipend to help their route to Yokohama, and they get to go straight to day two. None of that day one rubbish.
Yeah, I mean, World Championships is hard enough to get to, but some people make it look like child's play, and they are getting invites on invites. There are players getting close to the 4 figures of championship points already. Only a handful, but there are some really having a fantastic run this year, or are just very consistent competitors, and they'll have their eyes on those travel stipends and that day two of the World Championships, which gives you a huge advantage.
And of course, this weekend is not the only weekend where there are tournaments in which we can be playing. We've seen them, you know, already for quite a while now. We have a look here at the championship point distribution. Of course, first place here, we got ourselves 200 championship points. These are the regional and special events going all the way down. So interesting to note, of course, first place at a regional or special event, you still need a little bit of help to get your invite.
Yeah. It's not just one tournament and you're sort of done, unless it's an international championships. That's when you get that booming 500 points. What a great boast. I mean, it's no surprise, really. The international championships are some of the hardest tournaments around. There is literally people from across the globe trying to make it there. And we still are, you know, midway through that season. We're a little bit further beyond midway, but we still have a couple ICs to go.
Yeah, there are a couple of more tournaments we've got. Obviously, we've got Utrecht this weekend. The next one for us, of course, is in about a month's time, where we've got the European International Championships, which is going to be absolutely huge. We've got Scarlet and Violet being legal for the first time. We've got the rotation happening, and of course, like you said, those 500 championship points. Yeah. I am so hyped for that one.
Yeah, it's really helpful to chip away at these points as you go to the special events and regional championships, but everyone has their eyes on their own internationals. Even if you're just a player who is usually going to a handful of regionals, the internationals are something different. There are so many points on offer, and it's such an amazing occasion for everyone to congregate into one location. It's just one of the best occasions on the calendar. Even if you don't end up making it to the World Championships, you're going to have a fantastic time at the internationals. And as you said, Ross, there's so many new things happening in the EUIC in particular. It's going to be a fantastic event.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to be at the Oceania International Championships about a month ago, and I'm definitely going to be attending in EU. It's a short train ride, well, 5-hour train.
Yeah,
seems short compared to going to Australia. And of course, we did see that there's one regional in Malmo and a special event in Torino over in Italy. So we do still have a couple more after this. There's 2 more, you know, large events in Europe outside of the internationals, and then we finished off with that international championships in North America. And if you thought internationals were big in other places, North America's huge.
Yeah, they normally do 2 flights in the NAIC because there are just so many players clambering to get there. there. It's right at the end of the season as well, so players who haven't quite got there, myself included, might end up having to end up in North America to have that last chance saloon of getting into the World Championships. So there's a lot on the line for the NAIC, and it's always the biggest tournament of the year in terms of size.
Yeah, and obviously finishing off in Yokohama, and we've mentioned it on every stream so far, and we're going to keep doing it. The entire community is hyped for Yokohama. But of course, you know, we talked about the top 22 players in Europe will get their travel stipend and will get straight into day 2 of Yokohama. So it's worth having a quick check-in on the leaderboard, see who's there. And you called it, Joe, there are 2 players coming into this tournament that have broken that 1,000-point barrier.
It's an absurd amount of championship points. And Tord, you know, he's always in these higher echelons. He's a name we've seen over and over again over the last few years. Owen, though, he has been a very high-performing player, but this season seems to be different. He's clicked. Something has changed in Owen, and he is breaking further and further into these tournaments on a more consistent basis. I've really enjoyed watching him progress as a player over the last couple of seasons, and he seems to have hit every beat correctly this format. He's got a real good grasp on it.
He really does, and if you have a look down the list there are players of which you're going to be familiar if you follow, you know, the competitive Pokemon scene. Pedro Eugenio Torres, Xander Wojcik there, you got Stefan Ivanov. These are really high-level players. But then we've got some newer names. Jamie Franklin, a player who kind of this season, we saw a second-place finish in Lille. We saw him having a good run over the Oceania International Championships. A player that was on nobody's radar really at the start of the season, and now 12th place in Europe. Yeah,
not just a one-trick pony either. Did so well with that Blissey archetype, I think it was, for the second place, but also going over to Oceania and doing very well with Lost Zone Box. So picking up a handful of different decks and really showing their stuff as a fantastic player, well earning their right in the current race.
And of course, you saw there's a couple of different kinds of players on that list. You got people like Owen and Tord who are like, I'm in top 22. I feel pretty confident those players can hang up their cards until Yokohama and they've got that top 22. There are plenty of other players there, though. That race is on. We showed you the top 22. We didn't show you 23, 24, 25. Right. Those players want into top 22.
Yeah, they're jostling for position right now. All it takes is one great, you know, result at one of these special events or regional championships, and of course the international championships, to pole vault themselves right up that list and put them in a safe spot. But it felt like, you know, those sort of bottom 10 or so of the top 22, those are going to be jumping around all season, trying to keep each other in the mix.
Yeah, the top is probably not going to change a huge amount just because of the lead they've got, but it's being in top 22. Once you get into top 22, that's kind of job done until you get to Worlds and really start fighting it out. But actually getting in there, getting that travel stipend, which is a huge deal, and going straight into day 2. And I think we ran the numbers. Day 2 does give you a big advantage. Day 1 finishers who have to go through day 1 and get into day 2 are historically, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, Joe, but I'm pretty sure there is a real kind of, what's what I'm looking for, a pattern that the day 2 players do tend to perform better on average.
Yeah, they get that bit of insight into how the format is shaping up on that first day, so they can test and change things in their deck list as well, so they have a good picture of what archetypes are being played, which gives them, you know, a lot of safety into what their own deck choice is. They can feel a lot more confident about their decisions going in, and if there are any surprise archetypes popping up in day 1, sometimes you can adjust your play or just your deck in general to what we end up seeing on that first day of competition. As someone who's been in many day 1s myself, I've prepared a lot for an expected metagame and ended up facing vastly different decks sometimes.
Yes.
It's the way the cookie crumbles, but it means that day 2 is just such a big advantage.
It really is. If you go into day 1, all it takes is a couple of surprises, you're knocked out of the tournament, whereas if you're in day 2, you know, you're already halfway there, and of course, like you say, you can prepare for those, you can take your deck, and also, you know, while everyone else is desperately trying to get to that 6-win threshold to get into day 2, you're just kind of chilling there, playing a few testing games, having a nice long lunch. It does make a real huge difference, and that's why, you know, international championships, you get 500 championship points for winning. We only need 250 for an invite. But essentially what we're saying is, look, I mean, 500 gets you in that top 22 straight away.
Yeah.
That's what you're playing for. It's for the top 22. It's not really for an invite, because I think top 8 at an internationals gets an invite. That's just, you know.
It's stunning. And I mean, these internationals and even special events that we're at this weekend, they are a real mental marathon. Everyone starts, they have to go through 9 rounds and then carry on into the next day. You go straight through that top 8 bracket. And if you make it all the way to the finals, you've played a lot of Pokemon over the weekend. And rightfully so, you get a ton of points as a reward.
Yeah, depending on whether there's 5 or 6 rounds in day 2, 22, you're looking at 17 or 18 games of best of threes of Pokemon in the space of a couple of days. It is hugely taxing, and it does give advantages. And one thing I kind of like at the moment, we're seeing these good, dedicated players. We're seeing the same names kind of pop up. Somebody like Tord is winning continuously, and it's not because he's getting lucky, it's because he's got good decks, he tests, he knows the matchups, and that's why you see some of these players getting right up to the top of that list, because actually they are the players that have really put the work in. And you can get yourself, a couple lucky tournaments here and there. That's not going to get you up to the top of the top 22, but a couple of good results, you can get your invite and maybe sneak onto the bottom of that list.
Oh yeah, and I mean, it really does separate the sort of very best players, that top echelon, with players who, can find an archetype in the format. That's always something that I really like. Players who can really dedicate themselves to just one or two decks and really master that archetype. It can be another great way to reward yourself. It can cut down a lot on the time that it takes for you to do well, because you can use the knowledge as you've gone through the format of, the one or two archetypes, changing your deck as you go, of course, as new sets come out, but you can really become a master of your craft, and that can cut down on a ton of testing time, and it can still be a great way towards getting that invite. There are going to be players who can chop and change every week. These are going to be players who have, been playing the game for a decade. That's not for everyone, and there are multiple ways of achieving that invite.
Well, that's a really interesting point, of course, because, one of the stories this weekend is the format. We usually have a set in February. That's the general release cadence. Nowadays, of course, we've got Scarlet and Violet, the new block. It's coming out right at the end of March, so we've got like 5 or 6 weeks longer in this format than we would usually have. Do you think that gives an advantage to these players who are just going, right, I'm a Mew player, I'm going to learn Mew, let's go? Because you've now got like an extra 4 or 5 weeks, an extra 2 or 3 big events where the format's not changing.
Yeah, I think that's especially the case for Lugia players, because it feels like we're playing it at the peak of its powers right now. We are losing a lot of special energy to rotation when it eventually happens. So the Lugia archetype, although it's still, around, it's still going to be a deck for certain, it's having to really morph and change. And I think we're seeing it, at the very top tables right now. And that's because it has so many versatile single prize attackers. It doesn't seem to be so much the case in the post-rotation format. You're sort of pigeonholed into just 1 or 2 one-prize attackers, and they're a lot less versatile. So I feel like if you are a Lugia player, you're quite happy right now that you can accumulate a ton of points with that archetype while it's so strong.
I mean, that is always a good feeling when there's a deck you really like, that you're really good with. You take it to tournament, you're like, oh, I got a good finish. Yeah. And then you look at the calendar and you're like, I can go to 3 more events without a new card coming in. With this deck, I've just proven that I know really, really well. And there's little changes, Gudra seems a little bit better this weekend than it has been in previous weekends, but we're still very much in the same kind of format. And Gudra's not a good deck. It's small ebbs and flows in the kind of tier 2 decks, really, but Lost Box, Lugia, Mew, they're still the kings of the format.
Those seem to be the pillars, that's for sure. And I also like that this can be a sort of one last ride as well. If you are thinking that archetypes are getting much weaker or aren't even able to be played in the next format, we are seeing some Weezings out there. It's the last opportunity for these cards to, shine before they are, waved goodbye to and thrown into the expanded format instead. So it's amazing to see players clinging on to cards and really enjoying those sorts of archetypes and making the most out of them while they still can, before everything changes again with rotation.
Yeah, I mean, this one is fantastic. I love the fact that we've had this, and then we go straight from, hey, we've had this format for like 5 weeks longer than normal, to, oh yeah, no, we're literally changing everything and we're rotating. And we have got, the regional in Malmo in Sweden, we've got the Torino special event in Italy, but they are also post-rotation, post-Scarlet and Violet events. So you could be feeling really good about this format now, but if you don't have your invite, we've got 3 more events in Europe, and they are in a very, very different format.
Yeah, you've got to completely adapt. Still plenty more championship points up for grabs, but we're turning the action back to our round 8 feature match, and it's a deck that we've alluded to a couple of times. I think Ross in particular is excited about this one. It looks like we are going to be seeing some Galarian Weezing on stream, but it's going to be alongside Lugia V-Star.
We are, and actually I think we might have got my dream matchup, because we've got Arthur's deck, which is a very strange deck, which is not one we were necessarily expecting. Palkia V-Star, but there's a lot of tricks in there. Up against Christian D'Onofrio's deck, which is your Lugia, but with Galarian, Weezing, and Morpeko. And we've seen, you know, we know what the format's like at the moment, so I'll make no bones about it. When I was out a minute ago, Joe, I was looking for weird stuff. I was looking for decks, and we want winning in, so that's really important. These players are on a winning in. They're 5-1-1. If they win this game, they are in.
Yeah,
they
fantastic
are
to see.
guaranteed in. Doesn't matter what happens in the last round. They win, they in. And we've got two decks that we haven't really seen. We've seen Lugia, but we've not seen it like this. And we've got an actual Palkia deck, which, you know, go back a couple of sets. And, you know, was it
dominant.
Palkia that had 8 top 8 finishes in an Australian regional?
Yeah, it's a very different picture for Palkia now. It's really sort of choosing its tournament. It is a box of tricks these days. It's got Palkia, it's got Ice Cube in there for certain matchups. It has some Jelly Articuno plays, which might be coming up in this matchup. But ultimately, it's all based around the Inteleon engine. So seeing the likes of Galarian, Weezing, and Morpeko in our Lugia players' deck list really might throw a spanner in the works.
Yeah, I don't think Christian came into this tournament being like, I am going to tech for Palkia and Inteleon. But it seems like you might actually have done a really good job teching against Palkia and Inteleon. And that's kind of beautiful in a way. But this is a really important game, like we said. If you win this game, you are in day 2. And not only are you in day 2, but you're in day 2 with a round left. So there's none of this having to ID malarkey. If you win the next round, then instead of going in at, you know, 6-2-1, you're going in at 7-1-1. That gives a big advantage.
That puts you above a chunk of the field, really does give you a big gap, a little bit of breathing room, because we know day 2 becomes so difficult. You end up having to get, you know, 4 wins, sometimes only 1 loss, or sometimes even just 1 tie if you want to make your way into that top 8 bracket. As we start to see some prize cards, there's going to be the Radiant Charizard in there for Christian, and also the Radiant Greninja for Arthur here, which also isn't that helpful, seeing as though you definitely need to use this card to draw a bunch.
Yeah, you can have 1 Radiant Pokemon per deck, but apparently this is not a game in which we're going to be using those Radiant Pokemon. I think Arthur's going to miss it more than Christian, at least in the early game. Although, to be fair, with a choice about being able to hit 280 on someone like a Palkia can be a big swing later on in the game. Getting a, you know, KO on a V-Star of a single prize Pokemon, that is beautiful. But it seems like Christian is starting off here with a Lugia in the active. And was that the turn?
That's a pass from Christian.
That's not ideal.
I believe there was an Ultra Ball in hand. I may be mistaken there, as I just got a flash of it. But Christian taking things slow right now. Doesn't feel like he's under pressure, seeing a Sobble. So is this going to sort of scout to see what he's up against a little bit more before deciding on any of those things? Possibly even keeping the likes of Ultra Ball in hand can allow you to possibly top deck into out towards Archeops, and then you have an easier way. You know, it's so important not only to search cards with Ultra Ball in the Lugia deck, but also the discard function of these ball search cards are also so vital. So wanting to keep these around for the following turn. We do have a Capacious Bucket and a Battle VIP pass,
nice.
so a very strong start here.
Yeah, we like this from Arthur. You get your energy, you get your basic Pokemon. Of course, one of the reasons you play Capacious Bucket is to give an energy to discard with your Radiant Greninja. And unfortunately, Arthur is just about discovering that it is unfortunately prized. So really what you want is 1 to attach, 1 to discard with concealed cards. It's not going to be the case here. And Arthur, yeah, just checking one more time like, oh, it's not really prize though. I must have missed it. Sorry, Arthur, you didn't. It's in your prizes, so a little pivot needed, but that's still a decent start.
I really like that Christian's really not revealed too much about his spicy tricks in his deck either. Right now, he's just looking like any old normal Lugia player. Just a Lugia, nothing to see here. And for Arthur, he's going to probably go about his usual business as well. Maybe even end on a Keep Calling if this VIP pass isn't going to just simply grab a Sobble. Yeah, it's going to grab a Manaphy instead here, trying to protect from early Raikou plays is something that you have to keep in mind from conventional Lugia players, although we're actually not seeing it in Christian's list. So, you know, by not playing any cards and not showing anything, it has made Arthur play a little bit differently against what you would expect from a Lugia. And it's actually not going to help him out too much in this matchup, as we will end on that Keep Calling. Just for 2 Sobble, there is 1 in the prize cards, let's not forget, but still helping him get set up here. Yeah,
decent bench if nothing else. I like your point about Christian there, because when you're playing these spicy decks, the whole reason you play the spice is to catch people unawares and get cheeky wins you wouldn't otherwise get.
Right.
If you give the game away too early, then you give up your advantage, and that's just not what we want to see. So Christian here, he has got a bunch of options. Like you say, there is an Ultra Ball there.
Yeah, I see Bull Search, I see Bird Keeper, so we could go into a Coughing and try and then evolve up Ascension into a Wheezing.
And he's got the Darkness Energy to do it.
Yeah, and when your opponent is fully invested into an Inteleon engine, it doesn't sound like a bad option.
No, I quite
seems
like
pretty
it
reasonable
indeed.
to me.
And then, of course, you know, you've got... Because Galarian Weezing isn't exactly a particularly good attacker, yeah? It's just poison that puts 4 poison counts on during Pokemon checkup. That is, after your turn, after your opponent's, round and round we go. But that Coughing having Ascension basically says, as your attack, you can evolve up into the Galarian Weezing, so you end your turn blocking off your opponent's abilities. And actually, at that stage, one thing I like from, you know, Christian's side, there's no energy on the Palkia V-Star.
Yeah.
So you're not attacking next turn.
Yep, it's going to be Ultra Ball for Archeops and then Quick Ball it away. That's still the mission of this deck at the end of the day. You want to still rely on that Summoning Star. It wouldn't surprise me. Yeah, we are going to see the Coughing, so it seems like that is going to be the Bird Keeper option. The shake of the head from Arthur. It's not what I expected at all. Everything until this point has looked like regular old Lugia, but the script is changing.
Well, I walked past Christian's game earlier, and I was like, oh, he's got himself a Galarian Weezing and a Morpeko. What concoction is this? And then I saw Lugia in the active.
Wait a minute.
I don't understand this deck. That's not how this deck works. But it's kind of, I've got Lugia, but also there's a lot of decks out there, your Regigigas, etc. And, you know, your... what's
Has he just drawn into double Wheezing?
Oh, no.
Okay, one's a Coughing.
Okay.
I think we're good. I thought I saw double Wheezing drawn from the Bird Keeper there. Not quite that bad. We do see the Hiding Darkness, so we will see a successful Ascension here. Of course, Christian.
Yeah, the downside is, of course, you ascend by searching your deck. If they're in your hand, you can't use Ascension. That would be the worst-case scenario there.
We're good, we're good. We will see the development of this Galarian Weezing into the active for Christian. And we'll see how Arthur can respond to this. Wasn't expecting the lock at all. All he saw was a pass with a Lugia, and Christian has surprised him with an early Wheezing. Let's see how he can react to this.
Yeah, I mean, Arthur did what he was supposed to do. This was the play, but now you can't use Palkia's V-Star power, and you don't have an energy on Palkia, so you're not getting an attack off this turn. So essentially, it's a case of kind of pivoting a little bit. I mean, you need to get a Palkia up to KO the Galarian Weezing to really turn everything else back on, or establish another attacker, but you've got to do it with manual attachments, and this is not what you want to do, because right now, you're supposed to be dancing with the Froggies. That's the whole point.
Yeah, it's Shady Dealings the deck, typically. You're jumping in and out of the deck. You're jumping up and down in evolution line of Drizzile, just accessing your deck over and over again. But it's come to a screeching halt here with Christian's disruption in the opening stages. I do like the Wash Water attachment to Palkia V because, you know, your opponent may still be using something like the Amazing Ray Yveltal, so trying to deny that option is going to be really important. Try and be as tanky as possible. So just making sure that you're protected from those effects of attacks and make sure you stay out of range and be as bulky as possible is going to be huge. Thinning the deck with Capacious Bucket also pretty handy here, but I don't know if there's any more actions for Arthur here.
No, I honestly think it's kind of, you've got an energy, so I hope you got the V-Star next turn, and then you just retreat into Palkia and get a KO and hope. It's not an ideal situation at all, but it's giving Christian, I mean, it's doing exactly what you want. It's giving yourself time to just set up and get going, and I like the second Wheezing here, so that if one does go down, Christian does have a backup if he wants it to essentially keep rolling.
Christian gonna research away a powerful Colorless Energy and get a fresh 7. Still wants to use that Summoning Star themselves, of course, but is probably quite content with just trying to poison here and slowly chip away at a Sobble. I feel like that's something you do. You're trying to just change the tempo of the game, slow it down to your pace, and try and get some cheeky prizes even. That could be a huge bonus for him.
Absolutely. He did draw into an Archeops, but I don't think he drew into a way to discard the Archeops. So he evolves the Lugia, gets powerful Colorless Energy on there. But then I do think it's just going to be poison with the Galarian Weezing, the severe poison.
Absolutely.
And then, well, hopefully Arthur's going to be able to retreat and attack with Palkia.
Yep, and also now with the second Galarian Weezing evolved up, you're also playing around the escape rope, and Arthur does play it as well as Irida, so that door quickly shut on Arthur for his outs. It's going to make life even more awkward for him. Let's see if there's a top deck, because it looks like we're mulling over a card here.
The Hisuian
Heavy Ball. Typically, you'd be pretty happy with this. The Radiant Greninja typically so good at helping you draw cards. In this instance, with the Greninja turned off, it may be the Articuno, which is a stronger choice here.
Absolutely, because the problem is, if you KO the Weezing this turn, there is no guarantee you're getting your abilities back next turn. It could be, taking 2 KOs before your abilities are even turned on again, and that just takes a little bit of time. So just having an attacker, what's he actually gone for? Did we see what he went for?
We'll see when he replays the prize cards, I guess. we'll get there eventually. Making sure they're nice and randomized here. I can't imagine any of those Pokemon would come into play unless you have any other insta plays. All right, so it looks like it's going to be the Articuno. Yeah, the Greninja just far less useful. And going into the Palkia here, this is an interesting choice. It's quite a vulnerable V Pokemon, so is there going to be a V-Star here? We see the energy attachment to the Origin Form Palkia V.
Not enough to do any damage,
if he just passes the active, Christian could easily pivot into a Lugia and take a knockout.
Yeah, that's not good. Lugia attacks obviously does 220, so that's enough to KO the Palkia. Palkia needs free energy to Hydro Break and do 200, and that does, has he passed? That does seem to be what he's done.
Just 2 energy. Can't do anything else.
Oh, and he's got the Ultra Ball now to discuss, so we are going to see the double Archeops coming out. Oh, this game's about to turn, Joe.
Yeah, now we turn back into a Lugia deck. We're going to be going up into prize cards. Actually, it's going to be the Morpeko V. Of course, it hits for weakness here. This is a fantastic way to keep your lock established whilst taking a 2-prize knockout. This is going to be absolutely stunning here.
It's so good. I love it so much. Free energy, 150 damage. You discard an energy and switch it with one of your bench. Gee whiz, I wonder which bench Pokemon he's going to choose.
Wow.
So you hit for weakness, take the KO, go back into the Galarian Weezing here. And of course, because you've got those Archeops accelerating 2 special energy per Archeops per turn, there's no question of can I get the energy on the Morpeko here. This is beautiful. This is what I wanted to see.
This is absolutely amazing to see.
We brought a weird deck to stream, and it is doing its wonderful weird things, and it is showing us why this works. We're getting a masterclass here in why Christian's playing a deck like this.
Yeah, and it is flowing beautifully. I think even a turn attachment of Powerful Colors, then a second Primal Turbo. The Morpeko is ready to rumble. We'll be going straight back into the Galarian Weezing and continuing this lock. This is fantastic stuff from Christian.
I think Christian loves this matchup. It's not one we were really expecting to see, but the idea that you can, use Galarian Weezing so effectively against these water decks with the shady dealings and everything else, and hit for weakness with the Morpeko while going back into the Galarian Weezing, it does seem like, although Christian was preparing for other decks in the format, it really does seem like this is about as good a matchup as Christian was going to find if he was able to set up, and it does look like that's where we are. So Arthur's going to have to find a way around it, but he's going to have to do it with no attackers and no way to accelerate energy.
Yeah, he can't be too happy. You can see the expression on his face. He's just figuring out how bad this is for him. There is a forced discard from the Morpeko, but it's an easy trade here.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
No doubt we're going to be seeing one of these Weezing come back into the active. Looks like Christian's opting for the copy with the Hiding Darkness energy already established, going up 2 prizes and continuing this vicious lock.
And the Hiding Darkness energy, of course, is absolutely huge, because that is how you get the Galarian Weezing out. It means you got no retreat cost. It takes away your retreat cost while providing the energy, so you can just retreat into Morpeko, attack, get it back up, and you can just do this for days. It's why it's Hiding Darkness energy rather than anything else, and it's absolutely lovely here. So we do see
it's a Raihan, so we are at least going to get rumbling with the Articuno here.
Okay.
We know there are return attachments, but what do you take from the Raihan? Do you grab something like Boss's Orders to give yourself a way into shady dealings? Because there's just so much you need to piece together here. It would be a Boss's Orders for a future turn, or do you just start trying to establish your Articunos as quickly as possible? It's a really tricky choice, because the reason why Articuno works is because you have so many shady deals going on in the background, and quick shooting helps you fix your math. So when you're just using Wild Freeze and, self-damaging, it's not quite as effective.
No, I think you're right. I like the Boss's Orders kind of for next turn to open up the deck, because really this turn, because you've got the Raihan, that does mean you've got your Wild Freeze. You deal 70 damage, 50 to yourself, and automatic paralysis, so you can no longer just retreat. You have to be able to That's confused.
That'll be confusion.
For the people at home,
You've got a saying for this, right? Yeah.
Sleep, L comes first. Paralysed, R comes first. So you go left for sleep, right for paralised.
Yeah.
So
I always like to think of pillows for prize cards. So you put the pillows on the head of the Pokemon. That's why it's tilted that way. But whichever way helps you remember.
However you remember's good for me.
So will Christian find a way out of this? I believe we've already seen one of the bird keepers. So I'm not sure if there are any other pivot options in the deck list, or will this Wild Freeze be sticking this turn? He really is going to need some relief here, because if Christian continues to just take prize cards, it's going to get more and more grim for him.
Not seeing much. There's a Furisode girl, but that needs to have a bench space to play a Pokemon to switch in. There's one bird keeper, but we've already seen that be played. I'm not seeing any switch or escape rope. So I think not only this turn, but also next turn, because the Articuno can paralyze twice and still remain with 10 HP after the 2 lots of self damage. So Arthur's bought himself a couple of turns here. So did he get the boss's orders?
I didn't see the target from the right hand, actually. He's literally holding his cards close to his chest as Christian passes back over. Let's see what Arthur's choice was here. Going to have a look through Christian's discard pile to make sure he's just fully aware of what's going on in this deck list. You're really learning as you go here, seeing his eyes just lighting up as he sees a Furisode girl. There's 5 cards in hand for Christian. I wonder what the right-hand choice was, because nothing feels fantastic for you here. I don't mind bringing up Lugia and paralyzing it. That could be a decent play. Morpeko is another option. I was going to say
Morpeko. I like this because then essentially when the paralysis lock runs out, hopefully you've got someone like a Palkia ready to come in and KO Morpeko. And you've got to be thinking, right, you can't see the deck list, but you're playing a Lugia deck and you're playing at least a 2/2 Galarian Weezing deck. How many Morpeko can you really be running? You've got to assume it's a one-off.
Yeah, not much more space in the deck list, as you say.
And it's not a deck that generally tends to play much recovery, so you kind of feel like if you can get the Morpeko off the board, it's probably gone. So I like paralysing it this turn, maybe even paralysing it next turn, giving up the prize.
Well, so just jellies as well. You can just carry on with jellies, etc. You can, you know, chain this Articuno over and over again if need be.
Or, yeah, do that. That works.
We finally see a Shady Deal now that he has finally broken out of the Galarian Weezing lock thanks to this boss's orders. And we see our first Shady Deal. Also going to see Quick Ball getting rid of Crabominable. I would really like to see deals for deals and just really get as many established as possible, because you really want to be using quick shooting. I feel like that's how you manipulate this situation back into a good spot for you. It's such a great math fixer. We are going to see a training court, so we can get a manual attachment in this turn to another Articuno. This is another way of chaining your paralysis. You can just retreat into the next one and carry on using it. So it looks like we are going to be going down another 50 hit points on the Articuno, and it is going to be another paralysis here for Arthur.
Yeah, and then we got the Articuno next turn, and then at some point we're going to see a Palkia hit the board when the Morpeko has gone away, and then that is going to be able to use the V-Star power to accelerate a bunch of energy, and then Arthur's deck can do what it does.
We're straight back into Arthur's turn here. Paralysis finally sticking. There is quick shooting, there is scoop up nets in hand, another Drizzile for him, so a few options here. Definitely going to have to keep an eye on the math at this stage. How can he best utilize these quick shootings? You know, if you can knock out the Morpeko like mid-turn, during your turn, and force another Pokemon into the active position, this can be a huge way that you can sort of skip ahead in prizes. Arthur doesn't need to use a healing card this turn. He could also use Cape of Toughness as well to give yourself an additional 50 and then just hit yourself for another 50 damage. So we will eventually see the evolution into Inteleon here.
It does look like we've got this. So that's going to be... It's going to be a 140, 160.
Yeah, it's not ideal, especially if you force yourself into scoop up net. So possibly you hold scoop up net in hand and next turn try and do another quick shooting, so you have double next turn. That could be another option for you.
If you single quick shoot, because you single quick shoot in this turn, put him on 90, then you attack to put him up to 160, and then next turn you can do the quick shooting KO, force something active,
net,
and then keep going with the paralysis. So I think that might be what Arthur's going for here. And here's the thing, right? As much as Christian's deck is unusual and not what we were expecting, Arthur's is too. Palkia's not really a big thing right now. And I know it's more of an Articuno deck, but I love what Arthur's done, just going, right, well, Palkia didn't really work out very well, did it? Maybe if I just go aggro Articuno. It's working.
Looks like Irida will be grabbing another Shady Dealing, Inteleon, as well as Palpad here to recycle some resources. And as you say, I feel like possibly even a retreat this turn into the other Articuno is a strong play here.
Yeah, I like
whilst
that.
quick shooting, I feel like that's the best option. Arthur can wait around until he finds Emergency Jelly with that heavily damaged Articuno to try and reload it. You just have so much breathing room when you spam the paralysis, and as we know, Lugia can play outs, but they're very few and far between, and if they're already used earlier on in the game, it gives you a ton of control over your opponent's board.
Yeah, the only awkward thing is going to be when you free up a bench space. That does open up the Furisode girl to potentially come in for Christian, but that's not going to be till at least next turn. So we did actually see the quick shooting coming down onto the Lugia, though. Yeah. So that is going to mean that it would be a double quick shooting needed to KO the Morpeko next turn.
Yep, it is in range for Arthur, though, but he did choose to go for a Shady Dealings Inteleon to the hand. So maybe he has different plans. He may just be opting to attack into the Morpeko 3 times and using quick shooting for other Pokemon, setting those up for KOs as well.
Absolutely.
Action straight back to Arthur. Only one player is playing the game at this point.
Arthur's having a very nice game, and Christian's having a nice, relaxing sit down for 5 minutes. Let me know when it's my turn again, would you?
We're going to see the Shady Dealings, and it looks like going to be Scoop Up Net and Boss's Orders. So this is another way that you can slowly chip away at Morpeko. You can now Boss's Orders up the Lugia and quick shooting the Morpeko that would now be on the bench, and then continue on your paralysis path here.
Absolutely, and Arthur's kind of realised at this point Christian has no switches, or at least is just not drawing into them.
Yep.
The question is, does he know Furisode Girl is potentially an option? If you do know it's an option, then you basically play the, I'm going to try and make sure everything's got 20 left, and then finish them all off with quick shooting at, at the end of the game. You are trying to not take prizes, so you don't open up that bed space while you just sit there paralysing. It does feel like this kind of play is coming to an end a little bit. You're running out of time a little bit. There's the Articuno are getting just a little bit too heavily damaged at this stage. You are going to have to stop paralysing at some point, but I think the deal here is just getting close enough before that happens. And yeah, like you said, it's very much going to be the Lugia here. Finish the Morpeko on the bench, which is why we didn't see the quick shooting last term, while we sit there and paralyse the Lugia.
Yeah, seems like a very solid approach where you try and take out multiple threats on the same turn. It's a great way to put your opponent on the back foot. So Arthur really taking control of this board state. I really want to see some healing come in. I think, how many jellies does Arthur play?
Just the one.
Okay, so the one is in the prize card. So the only thing we can look for is Cape of Toughness to buy ourselves an extra turn of paralysis. Or Scoop Up Net. We already have the Training Court in play, so you can simply bench and reattach. Arthur using all of his resources very nicely here to ensure this paralysis lock stays for as long as possible. And
because you can attack twice with the Articuno, and Christian's not getting out of it, that does just give you 2 turns to manually attach to each Articuno. So if we can keep seeing stuff like Scoop Up Net, Cape of Toughness at some point, we could actually, I said it felt like this play was winding down. Arthur's like, no, it's all right.
I can do this for a long time, trust me.
And I do think we are going to the turn where we're going to try and see, we can even see 3 KOs in very quick succession, because that Galarian Weezing's not got that much left. But if you can KO the Lugia at the same time as KOing the Morpeko, sure, Christian is finally going to get out of the paralysis lock, but with down to 2 prizes for his opponent remaining, and with no real options on the board.
Yeah, and Arthur with just a 1 prize board state as well. It would be a really difficult comeback for Christian just based on the prize map alone. There's too many multi-prize Pokemon established on the board here. Arthur's really set a trap, and he's springing it right now. Very slowly, but really is getting himself into a fantastic position as he reloads a couple of Boss's Orders with Palpad here.
Ceiling's falling down, but the door's locked. It's happening really slowly, but you can't get out anyway. And it's weird, like, looking at the body language of the 2 players. When Christian got that Galarian Weezing out, Arthur just looked like, well, I don't know what I'm supposed to do about this. Got the Articuno plan, and now it's kind of the other way around, and Christian's just sitting there like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do about this. And you don't play that many switches in a deck like this because you've got the free retreat with your special energy, and because you're just attacking with what's in the, it's not really an issue very often.
Yeah, Christian sat there thinking, I'm the control deck, and Arthur saying, nope. It is, in fact, me who is taking control of this game, and it seems certainly that is the case. We have another quick shooting, so now we can access some prize cards for Arthur. Hopefully looking to find emergency jelly. We know it's not there, but even evolution incense could be handy for him. Now we could get a second quick shooting developed, perhaps, and really starting to put even more pressure on Christian.
That would be awesome. Or, like you say, that cape of toughness would be pretty good.
Yeah.
It is a 2-1 Intellion split here. 2 of the quick shooting, 1 of the shady dealings.
Yep.
So certainly being able to drop 4 damage counters a turn would be absolutely huge. That wheezing would not last very long.
Yeah. We know we're in here for the long haul, right? We know we're committing to this jelly Articuno gambit for as long as possible. So really just doubling up on quick shooting is the way to get the most value here.
Yeah, and I just love the way, and the jelly's gone right into the top, so it's not coming out, unfortunately.
It's a shame.
But we've still got, I love the game plan from Arthur here, and this is why we, you know, Arthur's not a name that's familiar to most players around, but this is why we know Arthur's a top-level player, because those first couple of turns went as bad as they could. It was worst-case scenario, and Arthur went, right, how can I play this game completely differently? Oh, wait, I'm playing a couple of Articuno. Let's just do that.
Yeah, and it seemed to work out really nicely. See an Irida now, so Arthur can continue to shoot it even more from the deck. I think he was already eyeing up that second quick shooting. It feels like a really important card.
Yeah.
And then it's just choosing which other items should be taken here. Looks like level ball for another Drizzile, giving himself even more deal options. He still has more scoop up net to go, so even without Jelly, he's finding a way to heal up these Articuno and keep that chain.
Absolutely, and he's got an Articuno on the bench with an energy attack. There's a training court on the field, so he is going to be able to retreat and then get that Articuno rolling, which is nice. He's not going to have to attack and give up the Articuno as a prize, which sometimes, if you get like the treble paralysis, it can be worth giving up a prize for it. But you just don't really want to do that unless you absolutely have to. We might see scoop up net again in a minute like we saw previously. We could see Cape of Toughness giving an extra turn. So there is still, it didn't look like this a minute ago, but there are still several turns of Articuno rolling. And the goal here is to make sure you never actually take a KO, except with quick shooting, so that Christian has to put something in the active, and you just go straight back to paralysis. Your goal is to make sure that Christian is draw passing for about the next 10 minutes.
Such a clinical job for Arthur here, thinking through all the math, making sure it's all going to be good. We're going to continue to ping down the Lugia V-Star by the looks of things, and then we're going to paralyze it once again.
Yeah, and I think 190 we're going up to here, if I'm doing
looks
that
like 190.
correctly.
The paralysis is still there. And that's the main reason why Arthur's hanging on into this game. We see a Professor Burnett. That's just to thin a few cards that aren't too handy for Christian right now. It actually doesn't change much of the complexion of the board here. But can we actually see a Furrowsode Girl at all here now that the board space has been opened up with the Morpeko knockout?
I mean, not after a Professor Burnett, we can't. Not this turn, maybe next turn. But the thing is, I'm trying to do the maths on Lugia, and I'm fairly sure Lugia is now in range. You will need 1 quick shooting, but that's fine because you've got 2 quick shooting. And then you're going to be down to 2 prizes remaining. And honestly, at that point, you could just actually go back to Palkia if you wanted to. You'd have to clear a bed space to do so. But attacking with almost anything, because, I mean, there's weak Pokemon on Christian's side of the board.
Well, I think you don't just knock out the Lugia this turn. You keep it paralyzed and commit quick shootings to other Pokemon, because then you can quick shooting it mid-turn instead.
Oh, absolutely.
So, yeah, again, Arthur fully in control of this situation. Will training courts, once again, that's not even been able to be bounced by Christian. So we're just going to continue with some shooting and some jelly action. Yeah, we're going to target down the damaged Galarian Weezing, putting it up to 90 now. So even that's getting into a vulnerable position. A second quick shooting puts it to just 1 quick shooting away, and Arthur is putting on a real show here.
And, I mean, we could see a free prize turn next turn from Arthur. Could potentially KO the Weezing. Could even maybe go for boss's orders, try bringing up another Pokemon, trying to basically take all 3 knockouts remaining in one go. Because, like we said, you do not want to take any prizes by actually attacking. You want to put them into range by attacking, KO with quick shooting. Because if you take a KO, Christian will actually get a turn to attack and do some stuff. So the goal here is very much keep everything in range of quick shooting, and you can take a KO with that because then something else comes active and you paralyze that instead.
Yeah, and Christian's Pokemon is definitely paralyzed. Let's just confirm that, as it is a pass by the looks of things back to Arthur. It feels like he's had like 7 turns in a row now. It's been absolutely absurd. So many attacks with the paralyzing bolt. We will see quick shooting to knock out the Galarian Weezing now. 130 damage. 1 more prize card. It's still not the emergency jelly, which is a bit of a shame for him. The Sobble not helping out too much. So how can he start closing out this game now?
I mean, what he could do potentially... Oh,
look at this, the Thornton.
I love it. Absolutely love it. So that we get into the Lugia. And I think this is game at this stage, because now you use quick shooting to KO the Lugia, and whatever comes active gets KO'd by the Palkia. And then Arthur takes one of the absolute best wins that we've seen on stream. Let's just double-check the maths here.
Well, he had to attack with the Palkia here. Yeah. That's what had to happen.
Because... Oh, he didn't get it with the quick shooting. Yeah, I was going to win next turn, but... No, I think he did get...
Was it quick shooting knockout?
I think he did get the KO with the quick shooting and then attack.
Oh, cool. Well,
okay,
there you go.
I was right. Okay. Go crazy there.
I thought we had to commit both quick shootings to the active to score the knockout.
No,
because
the
we quick
Lugia was on
once.
260.
All right, I thought it was 240. Yeah. We're good.
It was 1 to the Weezing to KO, 1 to Lugia to KO, attack with Palkia. That was an amazing final turn.
Happy days. I mean, Arthur, if you want to know about how to play this deck list, just look back at that game. You know, two prize Pokemon committed to the board. Birdkeeper already played. You're safe in the knowledge, pretty much, even when you're up against a wacky deck list, that there's only a handful of switch outs in Lugia at the most, so you can just commit heavily down to that Articuno line. And how many turns in a row with that? That was absolutely absurd from Articuno.
It was at least 6, because there were 2 Articuno that had 2 lots of 5, and we know that there has been... It was already 100 damage. 6.
Yeah, absolutely absurd. And the Thornton play at the end, what a great flourish.
And I love Thornton. That is one of my favourite cards in the format. I'm trying it in every deck, and with varying levels of success. That is the absolute perfect. Of course, if anyone's wondering, wait, how did he evolve into that Palkia V-Star? Yeah. Well, when you Thornton, the Pokemon is in play for the amount of turns as the Pokemon it replaced. Because the Articuno had been out for a while. Yeah, sure, the Palkia has to take the 100 damage, but it also gets the energy and, very crucially, the turns in play. So you do then get to evolve it and attack. And that final turn, and here's the thing, yeah, that final turn was flashy. You have to work for a final turn like that.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, Christian, he had about 3 turns that game, more or less. He just had to keep passing. So I think going into this next one, he really has to hold on tightly to that Birdkeeper, and even keep his board space open for Ferrosoid Gurg, because he actually has 2 outs. He has more outs than most traditional Lugia players to get around the paralysis, but Arthur has to be feeling good after that first game.
And yeah, it's not just a win, but especially like that, the first couple of turns, how they went and how you were feeling, and then how you managed to actually kind of finish out that game was absolutely joyous. And just, you know, setting up. One of my favorite games ever was when I lost to Pablo Meza. He took 6 prizes in 1 turn against me. It was beautiful. Didn't like losing,
no,
but the way I lost was absolutely masterful. And we saw a similar thing there with Arthur, just deliberately going, I will take prizes when I'm ready, and setting up that big final 4 prize turn, 3 KO turn. That is perfect.
Yeah, amazing to see. But Christian has to really get back into that good headspace. He's not done anything for a good 10 or so minutes. You know, he's really just been a passenger, just like us, watching the exact same game happen in front of him. He needs to get back into the right headspace. A couple judge already in those prizes isn't all that helpful for him. That could be another way that he can disrupt Arthur's flow, stop him from having that easy chain of Articuno. So those aren't ideal. Let's see what Arthur's working with as well here, who's eyeing up which Pokemon to lead out with right now.
Yeah, he's certainly got a couple of options. He's looking there, thinking which one's going to be the best to start off with. I mean...
And look at the body language difference already. He was just slumped back in his chair. Christian knowing that he's so close to that day 2, but he's come up against a tricky customer here in Arthur.
Nothing terrible in prizes again. You've got a few one-offs that you'd rather have, but it's not the end of the world. So it does look like Arthur's leading off on Articuno, and actually Christian starts off with that coughing. So we're going to see early... We're going to see an early ability lock here.
Yep, just the pass over to Arthur, who has got a few basic Pokemon, but I'm not sure if there's any handy supporters in hand right now. Yep, just the double bench and pass, and we're back over to Christian.
Well, you want to try using Sobble there if you can, get more basics out. It didn't work, but we do have the Articuno down. It would have been nice to get an energy, because we saw how important that was in the previous game. But it's still not a terrible start. You got what you need. Christian here is thinking, right, it's not just about what I'm doing here. Yes, I'm going to be able to get the Lugia. Yes, I'm going to be able to get the Weezing. But I need to make sure that what happened last game doesn't happen this game. And it's not just having those 2 outs, but it's also having, you know, having them at the right time. And here we see why Professor Burnett is being played.
Yeah, a really nice spot for it. There's just the Evolution Incense in hand alongside the Luminion V. So let's cherry pick those Arceus out the deck, put them immediately into the discard pile so we can summon them into play. So Christian has an interesting debate now. Do I start just knocking out these Articuno? They were so pesky last game. Maybe he just doesn't want to deal with them and can initiate a prize race thanks to that Hiding Darkness energy.
I mean, I do like the idea of just getting a KO on it now. Just, yes, maybe your opponent's playing some recovery. Yes, maybe they can get it back. Yes, you know, they're playing at least 2. But if you can get some early KOs on it, if you can KO 1 early, then save your Bird Keeper to KO the second one when it comes out, you might be able to just avoid them entirely. Yeah,
completely true, as the Luminion is starting to be powered up here for Christian. A second Primal Turbo to go. Looks like we're also going to see the evolution into Weezing. This is another way, not just the more Pico is a way that you can get Weezing back into the active, you can also Aqua Return.
Yeah, Aqua Return does 120, and then, you know, the Luminion, it gets off the field. It goes back into your deck with all the energy ready to then be reattached with Archeops the following turn. And then, of course, put in the Galarian Weezing active with that energy that gives it free retreat. So I really like the play here from Christian. This is another way of doing it. You get the KO on the Articuno, you get the Weezing in the active.
Seems to be some sort of debate from Christian here. Did he just choose to... So it looks like he actually used Ascension here to end his turn on the Weezing.
Okay,
rather than using Aqua Return and then bringing up a Coughing. He's valuing disrupting the Inteleon engine this turn, and we'll try and attack on the next one as we go back over to Arthur, who simply scoop up next Articuno and uses a Keep Calling here to grab multiple Sobble out of the deck.
Yeah, and I love the play from Arthur. Keep Calling is good, but also now the Articuno's on the bench. Christian wanted to KO last turn, but he also really wanted to turn off abilities. That was a really awkward choice. He couldn't have both. He chose to turn off abilities, which is often a very good call, but it does mean that Articuno is sitting there, and that is a little bit of a pain.
Yeah, they are Pokemon that you really want to deal with, if possible. I think some of the only Pokemon recovery is just using that Thornton. So that would be the only way that Arthur could, you know, reuse Articuno and bring them back into play.
Yep.
So Keep Calling will end Arthur's turn. He's going to have a look through to see what's prized. I think this time around, he's got to be a lot happier with access to Emergency Jelly, for example. That's a big card that you play for this matchup. Didn't actually need it in the end, but it can give you an easier path of just continuing with Paralysis over and over again.
Yeah, anytime you can chain Paralysis is a huge advantage, so we like that very much indeed. Christian here, we do see the Irida coming down, just gets himself a...
I think it was Luminion.
It was another Luminion.
Yeah, seems like a decent option.
Yeah.
So we see the turn attachments from Christian to Luminion V once again. So it looks like we will be seeing an Aqua Return prize taken here.
Yeah, I like this. Take a prize and get your Galarian active back into active. And we're going to kind of do the whole, I'm not actually going to really retreat, but I'll show you that I am doing it just for the stream.
Yeah, everyone's aware of what's going on here. The free retreat from the Hiding Darkness energy, go into Luminion and then push that Luminion back into the deck with its attack effect. Taking a knockout here and maintaining this lock, which, you know, still is a real big deal for Arthur. He had to right-hand to find a boss's orders last game to piece it all together. We'll see how Arthur's hand is treating him here, because, again, there doesn't seem to be much, and he's making a bit of a grimace right now of what options he has.
Yeah, and we've still got 15 minutes left, so if this is not a terribly long game, Christian can absolutely even this one up. And remember, if either of these players manages to get this game ending in a win, they will guarantee their spot into day 2. We do see the Thornton coming out early here.
Let's just get rid of this Crabominable. It's not too helpful. It's a spot for me to use a supporter this turn at the very least, so if I am able to unlock my abilities, I could at least do something here. As we know, there's Palpad in the deck list, so Thornton could make a comeback at some point later on in the game. Much better to have this dealt with, and just got to pass things over to Christian. It's his time to really have all the action.
Yeah, we saw this in the first game. The first couple of turns, they're Christians. They are the kind of, I'm going to set up, I'm going to get my Lugia, get my Archeops out, Get rid of your abilities. Now here is the boss's orders onto the Articuno. This is absolutely perfect. So now it does look like we're going to see another Aqua return coming out here. We're going to see the KO on the Articuno. The Galarian Weezing is going to go back into the active to cut off those abilities. And this is very different. But I think the difference is Christian played the first 2 turns last game not preparing for this. Now all Christian is thinking is, do not get trapped in the paralysis lock.
Yeah, Christian is saying, fool me once, you know, but not twice. He's now much more prepared for these Articuno, especially with one Thornton already played. That's really going to help him as the game progresses. He still has access to Ferrostoad Girl and Bird Keeper. I think he's put himself in a really good position here.
Yeah, and Arthur's down to a maximum of 2 Articuno there. There's 1 in the deck, and then there's 1 from a Thornton if you get it off the power pad, which is a bit awkward, frankly. So Arthur had such a good track last turn, and it unfortunately didn't. It worked beautifully. It's not going to work this time, but we see the difference. Christian's leaving that bench space open. He's not playing the Bird Keeper. He's hunting down those Articuno the second they hit the field. That is very, very different to how he approached the first game. And essentially, the big difference here is he knows what the score is.
Yeah, and Weezing is now so awkward. Shady Dealings turned off. Typically, that would be the way that you get straight back into this game. Charging through the deck, cherry-picking as you go. But Christian, with that Weezing in the active position, making life so difficult for Arthur. He may not have that high of a tempo turn here, although we are actually seeing an Ultra Ball, so it could be more Luminion action.
Yeah, we go.
Yeah, it's going to be another Luminous sign. 3 turns in a row. Is there any more gusting here? Because I think you cannot knock out this Radiant Greninja in the active with a Luminion here. It's going to have to be another option.
You can't. What I do love is that, you know, you're playing the Luminion here as an actual attacker, which is not something you usually do, but you still get to use the ability to go and grab a supporter card every time you play it anyway. It's how you kind of guarantee the gusting and all of that. So, no, we don't
Just 120 here. I didn't see which supporter was taken from Christian, but I feel like getting things like Bird Keeper in your hand is going to be pretty valuable to me.
Yeah, and, you know, we don't know... Well, we know Arthur's deck list. Christian doesn't, but I'm not seeing any Judge. I'm not seeing any Marnie. They're not cards we would really expect to see playing in here. We expect things like your Irida, your Raihan, your Boss's Orders, etc. So, although you can't guarantee they're safe in your hand, you've got a nice expectation that they are going to be okay in your hand here. So, Christian here is just setting himself up. And this seems to be a matchup where one of the players is miserable at all times.
Yeah, both of these players want only one player playing the game by the looks of things. A Scoop Up Net is an important resource, but it is going to be spent to protect the Radiant Greninja as we move back over to Christian for yet another turn, who might have to just go with a Weezing attack here, go for a severe poison instead, because surely he can't continue this chain of Luminion. Oh, he has yet another quick ball. Yes, he can.
Turns out he totally can. And it's awesome because you're not losing the energy. That's what I love about using Luminion. You attach the energy with Archeops, you put them back into the deck, and you haven't lost anything. You can get them out just as easily next turn with Archeops. And you've got the free retreat on the Galarian Weezing. All Christian is basically doing every turn is searching out Luminion. That's it. That's all he's doing. But he then gets a free supporter at the same time. So by now he must have, well, he does have access to any supporter in his deck. And like, if Arthur chooses to play like a Palkia at any point, you know Christian's got Serena in hand.
Yeah, exactly. He can turn when he has to into an aggressive Lugia archetype. You can't forget that. You're sat there worried about Weezing, but at any moment you could just completely change the script and turn into this very dangerous deck, as we know all too well. But Arthur, the clock is ticking on him, and also there's only 3 prize cards remaining for Christian. Arthur really is running out of time to get out of this vicious lock.
Yeah, and it's
going to be a concession.
Chosen not to try and get out of it. He's chosen to go to game 3, where he gets to choose whether to go first. We are 1 game each, and both these games have been very similar. One player set up a lock that the other player just could not get out of, and that was it.
Yeah,
so
it's really unconventional to what we're expecting with these archetypes. I mean, we know that the Palkia deck knows how to establish this lock, but seeing a different form of Lugia and seeing Arthur adapt to it so quickly in that first game was incredible to see. And then Christian's like, now I've seen your tricks. Now I know what you're up to. I can change my game plan as well going into this third one now.
And I do think that's really important. Game one, Christian, well, I should say fell for the, he didn't really fall for it. There was no option. By the time it came out, it was too late. Game two, Christian was not having any of it. Christian was fully prepared, and you saw it just did not work. Christian basically had his entire game plan of, you are not using your Articuno to paralyze me and get around it. And that then presents an interesting question for Arthur of, look, that worked brilliantly game one. It didn't work game two. It's probably not going to work game three. What else have you got?
Yeah, and so many of his supporters are committed towards just getting more shady dealings going. And when that's completely shut off, you have very few outs. It was literally a right hand that got you into a boss's orders that even got you into that first game. So there's very few cards actually helpful to Arthur in those opening stages as long as that wheezing is developed. So it feels like the pressure is on Christian. Can he get that early Ascension perhaps? Or can he even use some Furrowsode Girl action? That would be incredible to see in this last game.
Yeah, and I do think Christian is on the front foot here. Was caught completely unawares in game one. Game two, really ran around it. And it's a very sound plan. The plan he executed in game two was brilliant. Have the Glaring Wheezing nice and early. Shut down this water deck. Use Luminion, so you're not really committing any actual energy to taking KOs. You're just borrowing it for like about 10 seconds and putting it back in. And all at the same time, because you're always playing the Dominion, you've got access to things like boss's orders to go after those Articuno. And I really like the way this works.
Yeah, not just waiting around for severe poison to tick up slowly, just being a lot more proactive with the Luminion use seems very handy. There is one Luminion in his prize cards, but he does play 2 copies, as we know, and it is going to be Christian going first, I think, in this third game.
Seems to be. It looks like Arthur may have chosen to go second. You do, of course, have your Sobble, which is quite a nice advantage. And, of course, it's always fun where you can potentially, if you're Christian, you can get that turn 2 Ascension, for instance, or turn 1 going second Ascension. So there is a reason to go second for Arthur here.
Yeah, but I feel like Christian has a much easier time of using Ascension himself. So I feel like I would want to be going first if I was Arthur, so I'm a little bit surprised by this choice. Nonetheless, we are seeing Christian's first turn executed pretty well. We see an early Lugia V as well as a Coughing developed. And we have at least 1 Archeops in the discard pile. Is that 2?
There's 2 Archeops in the discard pile, Joe.
Happy days.
2
That's
quick
Lugia
balls.
gaming.
In fact, I think we actually saw 2 Evolution Incense. For Archeops, and then 2 quick ball to discard those 2 Archeops.
Not too shabby.
That's a nice little kind of nice symmetry there. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's why we see so many of these searching cards in the Lugia decks. Not just 1, not just 2, 4 Evolution Incense, 4 Archeops, 4 Quick Ball, 4 Ultra Ball. You just need to maximize those counts so that you get the ideal turns.
Yeah, and that's certainly paid off there. Of course, Christian, is wonderful play last game was made possible because he had the double Archeops the whole game. One of the things I've noticed, I've casted a few tournaments where Lugia's been legal, right? And there is one thing that's really shown itself to be true. If you want 2 Archeops but settle for 1, you lose. Every game I have commentated where they settled for 1 Archeops, they lost, except for 1 game with Natalie Miller where she wanted 1 because she was playing against a slower control style deck, so she only needed the 1 and she had a very different game plan.
Sure.
Having 2, so important, like you say, maximize those counts. So Christian's first turn was absolutely amazing, got the basics you wanted, the Archeops in the discard. Christian is sitting there shaking his head a little bit, but it's a decent start.
Yeah, I don't think you can be too upset with that overall. Didn't get a turn attachment, which I guess is one of the most awkward things, because if you could turn attach to either Coughing or Morpeko, you could then have an easy way into an Ascension on the following turn with just that it is a 2 retreat cost on the Morpeko, so that might be why it's a little bit more awkward. But Arthur, he's got the Irida turn 1, and we're seeing a VIP pass for the Palkia, as well as a couple more targets here.
That is an interesting one, because, of course, we saw that it didn't go well game 1, and we know there's a Morpeko on the field, but, of course, Arthur remembers game 2. Game 2 didn't work, and it seems like it won't work anymore. That Articuno was beautiful in game 1. It doesn't look like it's going to work anymore. But the other thing to bear in mind is we got 4 minutes left. You aren't going to win this game going Articuno.
No.
You might win this game going aggro Palkia.
Yeah, I think it's the correct move with this little time on the clock. You have to try and be as aggressive as possible. As you say, it was a really well-executed win for Arthur, but it took so long. It took the majority of the time in this round, and there's not much else going on, so it is just going to be a pass, and Christian now can Ultra Ball, and I'm not sure if there's any other cards in hand, so it might be a Luminous Sign rather than just going for Lugia. But no, we're not dealing with anything else, just Lugia here, and we're going to initiate that prize race. Summon out some Archeops and get rolling with the prizes.
Yeah, I like this. It's exactly what you need to be doing. These players need to be playing pretty fast at this point, or we're going to end up in a tie. Tie's not the end of the world. It would leave both these players on a winning in next round. Unfortunately, 5-1-3 is not enough to get you in, so you would need to win your final round. If you did, you would at least have one more match point than a lot of the players. You'd be going in on 20, I believe. So it's not the end of the world, but you win here, and you're already in.
So double Primal Turbo from these Archeops, powering up the Morpeko, so we can initiate this prize race for Christian. Not many easy places to go here, but we are going to see a Professor's Research, so a really nice end to this hand. So hopefully Christian can draw into a Weezing. That's what he's looking for.
Yeah, that's the only real piece that's missing here.
And there it is.
So you can get your hit and run with the Morpeko here, go into Galarian Weezing, turn off the abilities, and once again, and that Hiding Darkness energy is beautiful.
Stunning. Fantastic prize taken. Christian initiating that race and locking out Arthur. If you're going to win the game quickly, give your opponent as few actions as possible, and that's what Galarian Weezing is trying to do here.
Yeah, and this is how you win kind of quick games when there's not much time left. Try and make sure your opponent does very little. Their turns are quick. You're getting nice, easy KOs. And if I'm Christian here, if I'm aware of how much time is left, and he should be roughly aware of how much time is left.
No actions at all. Look at this, evolving into the V-Star, and that's it. Luminous Sign coming in now. Christian can go for Boss's Orders and take a 2-prize knockout.
Or
Serena even, yeah.
Same deal.
Yeah.
So you get the Palkia V-Star in the active. Of course, it only gusts up Pokemon V, but it doesn't matter if that's what you're going for.
Primal Turbo, jumping in with the Hiding Darkness retreats, going Morpeko, scoring a knockout. Christian going like the clappers here and putting himself in a good position to actually win in terms of time.
And here's what's important. If Christian gets one more KO before time is called, that means he is guaranteed 2 more turns, and that means he can get those 2 more KOs. He needs Arthur to finish his turn fairly quickly, and then he needs to just use Primal Turbo for 1 energy on the Morpeko, retreat, attack, go. It's your turn. I'm not turn 0. I get 2 more turns.
And I think Christian's fully aware of it. He's already holding. He's got the Aurora Energy poised, ready to go.
I think we're going to see one of the quickest turns we have ever seen when Arthur passes his turn.
Arthur is going to Thornton.
Doesn't really
his
make
Manaphy into a Radiant Greninja. It stops the Luminion taking the knockout, I suppose, and forces more discard of energy from Christian.
Here we go. Draw.
Going as quickly as possible. Let's get rid of anything, even the coughing.
Here we go.
And
retreat,
look at
attack,
this.
and he did it
this
with
is
20 seconds to spare.
This is honestly exceptional play from Christian. He had many options in his hand, but why would I want to go into my deck and waste time when I know the clock is running down as quickly as possible? And look at that.
When you saw Arthur draw the card, Christian's like, oh, I just made it. He's like, look, my board's fine. Draw your card. Start your turn. And then that exhale, because he knows as well as we do. This means that when time is called, which it has just been called, he now gets 2 turns. He needs 2 attacks to win the game. Arthur could potentially go for paralysis, but Christian's not used his Bird Keeper yet. Unless Arthur can stop him, Christian can attack twice. And it's not just a win, it's a day 2. That's why we got this game on stream.
And we see Arthur just playing out, showing that I have nothing. My hand is so poor. Simply a pass. And I think the writing is looking on the wall. Christian can now take a breath, take his time. He knows that he's just getting over the line. Fantastic play. I love seeing players being so aware of the amount of time remaining in the round so they can give themselves the best opportunity to close out the game, and that's exactly what Christian's done here. We had a very long, grindy first game, and it's completely changed now that we've seen this very fast pace of play in Game 3.
Yeah, and you saw Christian there. He had his entire turn mapped out. He had it ready. He played the whole turn in a matter of seconds. If he doesn't do that, this game's a tie.
Yeah.
That's what it needed. It was absolutely fantastic seeing him do it like that. He knew exactly what the deal was, and I love this play because now the Luminion goes into his deck, which gives him another out for getting supporters, or opens the bed space for a So Girl, which are his 2 outs just in case paralysis comes down, which does not look likely, but he's just played to all of his outs, even here where it looks like he's
nothing in hand for Arthur, nothing at all. More Evolution Incense. Christian can announce any attack here, so he is going to win and get himself into day 2 with this wonderful wacky deck.
Oh, I love this so much. It does look like we've got you draw, we attach, we retreat, we more Pico, we attack, and Christian D'Onofrio books his space into day 2 with a 6-1-1 finish with still 1 round to go, and that was absolutely wonderful. That was one of the most interesting series we've casted in a long time, Joe.
Yeah, and Arthur feels a little bit disappointed. I feel like he's looking back now and seeing how his Irida could have been different. He could have drawn cards from Radiant Greninja. It's one of those things where he felt so demoralized after that, but that's not to take anything away from Christian. He had a fantastic board state in those second games and the third game. He adapted his play so well after a crushing Game 1 defeat. He really has been worth every penny of that win.
Absolutely, and like I say, when I was wandering around last round, I wanted to see his deck in action. I wanted to see what happened, and I was not disappointed. We had an absolute corker of a feature match, and it was between 2 5-1-1s, which, you know, it's about the highest stakes we can get. You know, next round we're going to try and get a couple of 5-2-1s up on the stream, because what we really want, the most exciting games for me are games where you have to win to get in. There's no ID, ties do nothing for anybody. You have to win to make it into day 2. And we saw Christian, one of my favorite moments, probably my favorite moment on the stream we've seen so far today, was Christian visibly exhaling when his opponent drew a card before time was called, knowing that that gave him a chance to close out the game.
Yeah, how often do you hear complaints about a player saying, I just needed 1 more turn, I just needed 30 more seconds? Christian was prepped with energy attachments ready to rumble, so he spent no time, wasted no energy at all, and just got those turns ticking down as quickly as possible and making sure he got over the line. Fantastic stuff to see.
A lot of other players in that situation are coming off going, I was 1 turn away.
Yeah.
Well, I could have done it. I just needed 3 KOs. I only had 2 turns left. But that's the difference between players that have been around a while, players that are used to the tournament environment. It's the one thing you can't really replicate playing online. It's why you see a lot of newer players having a few more ties and experienced players, because there is a skill in knowing when to concede, knowing when to speed up, knowing when you can take your time. And let's be clear, when we say take your time, we mean play out your turns thoughtfully. We don't mean anything more nefarious. We mean there are some times where you can play through your turns in a nice calculated manner, and there are some times you need to just play fast. And maybe you misplay, but you have to play fast.
Yeah, as long as everyone knows what's happening, as long as you're being clear with your actions, you can do it as quickly as possible. As long as everyone's on the same page, there's nothing wrong with speeding up your gameplay. And as you said, Ross, it can open the door for you to maybe make some less correct choices, but sometimes even less perfect choices done in a good amount of time is the optimal answer, and it certainly was there.
Absolutely. You know, maybe we saw the board not being as established as it could have been or anything like that, but we saw the key KOs. In a longer game, we're going to see a more relaxed game plan there. We couldn't see that. It had to be that quick. But, you know, Game 1 was still one of the most entertaining games we've seen in a long time. It was beautiful. And that final turn, taking a treble KO with quick shooting and the attack, was absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, it really makes me miss the Inteleon engine. It's great to see it back. When you get to cherry pick these plans all together and have some really cute math going on with all the quick shootings, it's amazing to see. I really hope that Arthur can still make it into that second day of competition. He has one more chance to get there, because he is certainly an expert pilot with that archetype, and it's one of the more interesting ones out in the field.
It really is, and we've just seen one of the most interesting decks that we've seen in a long time get a win. So I think we really need to go and have a chat with Christian and find out, why did you build the deck like this?
Hi everyone, Hi, sorry, apologies. Thanks, guys, for bringing it over to us. I've got an amazing opportunity now to speak to our round 8 winner. Congratulations, Christian.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
An amazing match. One, firstly, congratulations for making it into day 2 with such a innovative deck. Amazing to see. Game 1, let's talk about the games a little bit. Game 1 was really, really tricky. It looked like you got the lock at one point, and then all of a sudden one boss turned it around. What were you thinking? How were you feeling at that moment?
Yeah, because I was really unlucky to use my trolley support at that switch.
Your bird keeper,
Yeah, the bird keeper, and I had to discard the Fury Set Girl on the second turn of the game.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so it was that one boss that locked me out of the game. Yeah, so it was. I was thinking all the time to scoop, but I should have scooped.
Yeah, but I guess you were still like learning and figuring out what was happening, how it worked, how it plays out. Because of course we saw the Melpico V, who actually hits for weakness on a lot of his on his board, and then you go into game 2, you go for the same sort of strategy because game 1 you just about hit the ascension and the energy to get the wheezing. Game 2 went as planned as what you would normally expect, right? So you got the lock in, and then you were able to, take game 2, and that gave you a lot more confidence, right?
Yeah, because in game 1 I didn't have the judge ready to go after he used the Rita. So he said, I think he took the boss with Ryan.
Ah, okay, yes, sure.
Yeah. So I didn't have the judge ready to go after that. But in game 2 and in game 3, I did have the opportunity, but he didn't do that.
Yeah.
He didn't have the Ryan, he didn't have the boss. So it was much easier.
Yeah. You didn't need to overextend, and it worked out really cool to see your deck in action, because everyone's scared of seeing like Galarian wheezing, right? And then you're playing it in a deck which is also scary when you just see a Lugia, and then all of a sudden you put them together, and you can slow your opponent down and you can build your board. And I really like the Morpeko. What made you sort of bring all of that concept together? Why did you play wheezing in Lugia?
Let's say I combined the most powerful cards.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Because Lugia obviously is the best deck. It's consistent. It has single price attackers. He always has a chance to win. But the problem is, if in the mirror, if you go second, pretty much you lose the game.
Sure,
if you draw the double Arceus and the Lugia. So the thing was, before the Liverpool regionals, we were trying to find a deck that beats Lugia.
Yeah, sure,
in the mirror.
Of course, yeah, understood.
In the mirror, going second.
Okay, yeah, pretty vital, right?
Yeah. We come to this deck. Actually, I did make day 2 at the Liverpool regionals, and I did break some games in day 2, and I make top 64. But I still believe in the deck. I made some changes because I was running Marnie.
Oh, okay.
But in the Liverpool regions, they were playing Canceling Column.
Sure.
And they just put the Canceling Column or the boss with Oranguro on top, maybe on the first, on the second turn. So the judge just pissed me off.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and it's all working out, right? So you've at least evolved the deck that you've played and done well with before. So that means you've had a pretty good season so far. A couple of day 2s now. This puts you on a really good record, and then you got one more round to maybe get some more points for day 2 as well. But that's amazing. So tell us a little bit more about the other tournaments this season. How are you doing points-wise? Are you hoping to go to Japan and World Championships in Yokohama? Is that the plan?
Yeah. I mean, with this victory, I made day 2, so I'm qualified for the
Congratulations, amazing.
Thank you. And it's been pretty well. It is my first season that I'm going to all the tournaments, and I made points on all of them.
Amazing,
maybe, most of them.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and it's before this season, I only made the 2 at London Internationals. So it was very very good season so far. Yeah,
it's nice to be like really consistent and you're like performing super well, right? And you know, a lot of people are now starting to see your name more and more often, making it to day 2. And like you said, you've got your invite now, which is amazing. Like I said, congratulations one more time. Just want to say thank you very much for speaking to me. I loved seeing the innovation with the Lugia and the wheezing. So congratulations. I saw you go through all of the emotions, right? So amazing. Good luck for your last rounds. Good luck for day 2. Thank you very much, guys, for watching this interview with Christian here. We'll be going straight to maybe a short break, and we'll bring you back another feature match for our final rounds of day 1 at this Pokemon special event in Utrecht. Stay tuned.